Ferrari's dominant 1-2 finish at the 2024 United States Grand Prix sent shockwaves through the paddock. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz delivered an impeccable performance, slashing Red Bull's lead to just 8 points and flipping the season's narrative on its head. With Ferrari pocketing a whopping 49 points over the weekend, they've transformed from underdogs into genuine title contenders, reigniting the fight as we near the season's climax. Red Bull managed to walk away with 30 points, but their grip on second is slipping. McLaren, despite accumulating 22 points, left Austin feeling frustrated, knowing they missed a golden opportunity to increase their lead in the Constructors Championship. However, it was the intense battles behind the red cars that truly defined the race. As the lights went out, Norris, starting from pole, seemed to have the inside line covered, but Verstappen, ever the opportunist, saw a gap and went for it. The result: both drivers ended up off track at the exit of the first corner. Replays showed that Norris left a gap wide enough for Verstappen to exploit, allowing the Red Bull driver to get ahead. Although Norris was visibly frustrated, fuming over team radio that Verstappen had pushed him off, many saw it differently. F1 expert Martin Brundle critiqued Norris's approach, suggesting that the McLaren driver hadn't been aggressive enough in defending his position, leaving a Red Bull-sized gap for Verstappen to pass. He really needed to close Max off, Brundle explained, adding that Norris wouldn't enjoy rewatching the footage. Norris felt aggrieved by the incident, claiming that Verstappen had no intention of making the corner cleanly and that he was forced off the track to avoid a collision. McLaren's team boss, Zak Brown, even labelled Verstappen's move as a dive bomb. Despite the dispute, the stewards did not penalise Verstappen, and the battle ultimately went in his favour. That early scrap opened the door for Charles Leclerc, who didn't need a second invitation. He slipped past into the lead, and once ahead, the Ferrari man was in a league of his own. As he stretched his advantage lap after lap, it became increasingly obvious that only a disaster could keep him from taking the win. Brundle noted that Ferrari's resurgence could play a pivotal role in the final 5 races of the season, remarking, "This is a big story now." As Leclerc extended his lead, Ferrari's newfound form positioned them as genuine contenders in the title race. By the time Verstappen made his first pit stop on lap 25, Leclerc had built a comfortable 10-second cushion, allowing him to maintain control when Ferrari brought him in a lap later. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz had a relatively quiet race but found himself in third after briefly challenging Verstappen on the opening lap. Ferrari smartly played the undercut, bringing Sainz in on lap 21. That early stop paid dividends as, by the time Verstappen pitted, Sainz had gained enough ground on fresher tyres to slot back in front of the Red Bull. With Sainz ahead, Verstappen's focus shifted to Norris. Both McLaren drivers, Norris and Oscar Piastri, had a slower first stint, running in 4th and 5th, lacking the pace to challenge the leaders. However, McLaren's strategy paid off in the second half of the race, as they ran their drivers long to gain a tyre advantage. Norris pitted 6 laps after Verstappen and returned to the track 6.6 seconds adrift of the Red Bull. But in just over 10 laps, Norris had closed the gap, setting the stage for a thrilling duel. The pair went wheel to wheel several times through the twisting section after turn 12, but Verstappen defended brilliantly, particularly into the hairpin at turn 15, denying Norris any clean opportunity to pass. Then, on lap 52, Norris saw his chance. Coming out of the back straight, he went for the outside as Verstappen held the inside line. Both drivers ran off track, but it was Norris who emerged in front. Verstappen, never one to miss a beat, immediately radioed his team, arguing that Norris had gone off track to complete the overtake and should give the place back. Despite Verstappen's protests, Norris pressed on, insisting to his team that he had already been ahead at the corner's apex, but the stewards didn't buy it. They handed Norris a 5-second penalty just before the race's end. Though Norris had pulled away from Verstappen, his 4.1-second lead wasn't enough to negate the penalty, dropping him to 4th behind the Dutchman. A dejected Norris summed it up afterward. "That's life. I didn't do a good enough job." When asked if he should have handed the place back, he reflected, "Maybe that was my one and only chance." Asked about the incident with Norris, in which Verstappen himself went off track, Verstappen stated, "I have my opinion, but I don't need to say it here. I let the stewards do their thing. For us, it was a race from which we learned a lot, and we are just going to analyse that," the Dutchman concluded. F1 expert Martin Brundle weighed in on Lando Norris's penalty, calling it a fair decision. "I think that's a fair cop for Norris. I think he would have been better giving that back straight away," Brundle remarked, suggesting that had Norris found another second in the final laps, it could have been the right call to concede the position immediately. Brundle felt a penalty was inevitable. Max Verstappen, who was directly involved in the incident, also expressed frustration despite getting the result he wanted. responded, stating, "That was a hard race. It's just a bit weird that you can overtake outside the track," referring to Norris's off-track pass. Despite the challenges, Verstappen admitted that defending against Norris was fun. F1 analyst Anthony Davidson offered his thoughts on the post-race incident review, suggesting that the controversy surrounding Lando Norris's penalty could have been easily avoided if the circuit of the Americas track layout was adjusted. "My final gripe with all of this, they shouldn't be off the track at all," Davidson said, passionately advocating for gravel traps around the outside of the track. "I hate this. Please, Austin Circuit, please, I beg you, put gravel there, then none of this will be a talking point." He expressed frustration with the tarmac runoff areas, implying that a physical deterrent like gravel would prevent drivers from gaining an advantage off track. Norris, speaking after the race, gave his team the benefit of the doubt, understanding the complexities of the decision-making process. "It's impossible to know," he said. "They obviously can't make their minds up for a few laps, so it's obviously not an easy decision. Otherwise, it would have come a bit sooner." Norris acknowledged that the steward's delay in delivering the penalty reflected the difficulty of the situation. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella was firm in his stance, expressing that his team believed Lando Norris's move should not have been penalised. "We had no doubt the move shouldn't have been penalised," he told Sky Sports. Stella criticised the steward's interference, calling it inappropriate given that both Norris and Max Verstappen went off track during their battle, which, in his view, meant both gained an advantage. He lamented the lost podium for McLaren, particularly after a strong race where Norris had been forced off at the first corner but fought back admirably. Despite the setback, Stella acknowledged that the decision could not be appealed and concluded, "This chapter is now closed and we move on to the next race." Interestingly, earlier in the race, it was Norris himself who had complained about Verstappen, claiming that the Dutch driver had gained an advantage by going off track. Verstappen's third place meant the Dutchman was again 3 points ahead of Lando Norris, after he also gained 2 points on his rival by winning the sprint race. As a result, Verstappen now has a 57-point lead in the World Championship. Meanwhile, Piastri finished 5th and George Russell salvaged Mercedes' weekend, climbing to 6th after starting from the pit lane due to a crash in qualifying. Unfortunately, his teammate Lewis Hamilton wasn't as lucky, crashing on the second lap. "I've never spun out, especially on lap 2, a frustrated Hamilton said. "It's devastating because I love this race. The rivalry between Verstappen and Norris continues to simmer, but with each race, the stakes grow even higher. Do you think the stewards were justified in penalising Norris for his off-track pass? Or should the decision have gone in his favour, considering both drivers left the track during the incident?" Let us know in the comments. Until next time, goodbye for now.